All right, so not seeing anybody on Zoom land or in person who wishes to address the board. There's no privilege of the floor. And minutes. So I never sent, I think officially, I mean, you had sent nice minutes. I think Barb, I think after the last meeting. I certainly can't correct those because I wasn't there. Will, did you attend the last meeting?
I'd have to look at the minutes.
Yeah, did you attend the meeting in April?
Uh, I don't think so, but honestly, I can't remember April. If I saw the minutes, I'd probably know.
All right, we will.
No, it says Brad, Barb, Adam, Michelle.
Okay, we will hold off on approval of the minutes then to at least get some sort of feedback from them.
Yes.
Okay, and then Michelle, the town board report, she's not here, said she would try to attend if possible. But as you probably both saw, all she said is that, but you know, now the town board has passed the flood damage prevention law. And that was in part required because the new FEMA maps, the town had to refer to the new FEMA maps. And so that's what's been done. And all of that was very boilerplate. What we may take up sometime this year is adding something to that would add some better protections of water quality in the event of flooding, though there is some stuff in the flood damage law that does do that. So that would be for the future. Which brings us to the mobile home park law, which you guys, great, you got through a lot last time on that. So that was good. And so I tried to build on what was in the minutes and our discussions as I remembered them and to put some stuff down. And then Will raised an important question about definitions today. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Other things. I was going to go down things sort of one by one as they are on the agenda. So my understanding of you know, my proposal, and I think this is where you guys were at last meeting, was that the existing mobile home park law can and should be rescinded in favor of making a few additions to the zoning law, and that would then be an appropriate way to govern these in the context that we now have site plan and zoning. So I guess I will move that we suggest the town board that they rescind the mobile home park law. Do I have a second for that motion?
I second. Nope.
And are you typing notes?
I can.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. We'll stick the job on somebody else next time. Okay, and I'm just gonna say, is there any objection to that plan? Okay, so that is what we will recommend. Next one, in the use table, multifamily housing above 4 units requires site plan review. At one time in our discussions, the zoning commission had that as needing a special use provision, special use permit, and that is still how the text reads in section 6.5.13.a. But again, the town board explicitly did delete and change special use permit to site plan review only. And I think it simply was an oversight that language did not get struck. And so I think I gave you guys the wording in whatever I sent out originally.
Right.
But it simply is, the motion would be to strike where it says and special use permit, and then refer only to the Article 7 site plan review. Right. Okay, so I'm moving that. It will be seconded by whoever did not second the previous one.
Okay.
We'll just alternate. And any discussion of that point?
No.
Okay, we all okay with that correction?
I'm good.
All right. So that brings us to the fact that we then need to add a new section to that would cover manufactured home parks. So there's something that will be inserted into existing sections of the zoning law, but there's nothing that specifically addresses manufactured home parks. So, the proposal is that, again, section 6.5.13 in general is where various other uses are incorporated into the zoning law. And so this would create a 6.5.13.f titled manufactured home parks. I do have a question. Is that enough, or is there like another phrase referring to modular homes or anything else that we should mention in that title?
I would say no, but let's make sure that manufactured home parks is in our definitions.
Yes, and I think that it is. Let's see, I have zoning law here. Let's see. I did I put it on here? Yeah, I may not have put it on this flash drive. Here it is. Going to go here and share screen. All right, so I was trying to just share that, but I think I shared everything. Let me,
Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
yeah, let's try. I want to share.
Okay, so the zoning law says
Yeah.
manufactured home park. Any parcel of land which is planned and improved for the placement of 3 or more manufactured homes used as dwellings, and that meets all New York State Building Code and public health laws. And then under manufactured home definition, it's factory built dwellings that meet the National Manufactured Home Construction and State Safety Standards Act, commonly known as the HUD code. Mobile homes and modular homes are both manufactured housing.
Okay, that was what I was.
And then it
Okay,
goes
great.
on to say modular homes are this, manufactured homes are this. So I think we're covered.
Okay, great. I'm now trying to stop sharing, and I can't tell how to do that. It used to be right under the share.
But you were adding a reference to the county.
Yeah, we're gonna get to the things we're gonna put
Yeah.
in there in a second. As
But,
soon as I can stop, oh, there, stop sharing. I got it.
Right, what Barb just read refers to state health laws, right? But doesn't refer to county recovery.
But no, so, but,
That was just a definition.
yeah, so no,
Okay.
when we insert something that says manufactured home park, we don't have to define it because we don't have to write a definition because it's already in there in the zoning law. So, so we're gonna add that section. We're gonna take that as something that we're passing,
Yeah.
right, that we
Okay.
recommend. So now what's gonna be in that is basically 3 points. And the first is the need to obtain an operating permit. So the language I put out, so this would be, subpoint 1 in this section F. All operators of a manufactured home park must obtain an operating permit from the Tompkins County Division of Environmental Health to be renewed on a schedule determined by the, you can either spell out Tompkins County or say TC Division of Environmental Health. So that's what I put out as a suggestion. So now that is up for discussion as to if that's adequate or should we add or delete words.
For just reflecting discussion we had at the last meeting, I think the sense of the group is that would be adequate. And because we had some earlier discussion about specifying, like this was good for a year or 3 years or whatever. And since the town, we don't do that operating permit, we thought that the Tompkins County Division of Environmental Health, whatever they say, and I forget the specifics, but I think it was, like they can go as many as 3 years.
That's what I remember
And
you guys.
yeah, and so, but they could do less than 3 years if like somebody's had a violation and they don't. And I think I gave an example where it was even like 3 months that they approved it for. So, yeah, so we want to defer to them. So I think this language was fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds good.
All right, so,
But that one's passed.
yeah. And then the other is this, so yeah, the town has had, it was, I think, certainly news to me and somewhat news to our new code enforcement officer, because he found it when digging, I think, for information for me in general, but the town has a manufactured home installation permit application. So one already does exist. We don't have to create that. And I was actually putting it in just, you know, again, they have to fill it out whether or not we put this in, but no one, you know, how would you know about it?
Right.
So the point would be to add a sub point 2 that, and the wording would be, installing a manufactured home requires a completed Town of Caroline manufactured home installation permit application. And Will, I concur with what you said that, yeah, I just want to, you know, if people know where to get it, I think they'll know to contact the town and either the town clerk or they'll go right to the code officer and they'll get it, so.
Right.
Okay, any objection to adding that?
No, I have no objection to it, and I, you know, agree with this being included. The only question that comes to my mind is because this is going to be in a section on manufactured home parks. I think that permit is required for any manufactured home, right?
Yes.
Not just for parks. So, you know, I'm not suggesting that we add a whole nother section on, you know, manufactured home period. But just to point out that it is required both of individual homes as well as park homes.
And I do have a suggestion for inserting in the regulations for all districts the same wording, which we'll
Okay.
get to in a minute.
Okay. All right.
Agreed, good point. But yeah, because this, yes, it does not matter whether you're in a park or not. I thought we should have it both places.
Yeah.
Just so to cover the bases. It is, yeah, in that sense duplicative. And then the final provision to add, in this particular section, is the skirting requirements. So Will, yeah, I agree. I knew you found some information. What was never clear, because you talked to this person, you know, who requires the skirting be installed? I know that, and that's the part that I got bogged down on, is that I couldn't refer to someone like saying, you know, per federal law such and such, or per state law, skirting must be installed. I
Yeah.
never got that kind of reference, though everyone says, oh yeah, it's probably required, but, so I don't know if you have anything firmer than that.
Well,
I
remember.
found it. I found the New York State reg. It's under the ICC code, under the residential code, and I sent it out.
Yeah,
Did you see that?
I do
That-
remember you sending it out. Do I
Well,
recall the
she
details?
No,
sent it
today.
out at 6:29.
Oh, that I
Yeah,
didn't
sorry,
see.
last
Yeah,
minute.
But Will, I think the important sentence is the first one, which
Yeah.
says skirting and permanent perimeter enclosures shall be installed only where specifically required by other laws or
Yeah,
ordinances.
and that's
so
what I
that's why
found.
we have to require.
Right, that's what I found a long time ago. That
Yeah.
language led me to think that, well, it's not always required, but everyone I've talked to, from the
Yeah.
code officer to the person you mentioned, says, oh yeah, skirting is required, but no one's been able to put a finger on. And so
Oh.
that seemed to give flexibility to the local community to not require it.
Well, it up to a point. So there's the HUD-based laws and like typical layers of regulations. The state adopted its own set of rules by making their requirements better than, I don't know how else to put it, better
More
than what HUD.
stringent.
Yeah, thank you. More stringent. But any mobile home must be installed according to the manufacturer's instructions. The manufacturers are required to meet the federal standards. The use of the skirting is if it's required, it's because HUD requires it for particular conditions. And so that means the manufacturer has to require it for particular conditions. So the manufacturer will include in the instructions whether it's required or not. And then the installer or builder has to meet those requirements. That's built into everybody's code.
So
So,
I'm
mhm.
gonna short circuit that conversation here to say, is there a problem though with saying, because the manufacturer will have specifications for the skirting for in what zones, whether zones it's required. They will definitely have specifications for skirting. And all we're saying here, it may be redundant, because is that a problem, is that you gotta use it here. And we probably are a zone that already requires it, right? Because of our winters.
No, not really. I don't think
Okay,
so.
So I'd like to suggest not using the word specifications.
okay,
Because I think that that could be interpreted, it's only if the manufacturer specifies that it's required.
Okay.
You need to do it. And I think we're saying we want it everywhere. So I would suggest, shall have skirting installed in accordance with manufacturer's installation instructions. Instead of specifications,
Yes.
installation instructions for skirting or referenced standards. Because if it's like an older one and there's not installation instructions, from the manufacturer, reference standards is language that's used elsewhere, in various other codes and language about manufactured housing. And that means that somebody would have to reference the standard that they're following, right? If they're choosing not to use the manufacturer's installation instructions or can't, they would reference whatever standard they are using.
So,
The other thing that I would suggest adding to this, and I looked at a number of other town level manufactured home park laws. Many of them refer to a time dimension. So inserting something that says skirting must be installed within 60 days after completion of utility hookups. Or some say 60 days after placement of the manufactured home. To me, it's logical to do it after completion of utility hookups, just because you could plow the home up.
You gotta take it all off
You
before you go
know,
in
no
there.
one, yeah, no one is planning to live there or anything. So I would suggest that we revise this to say a manufactured home used as part of a multifamily development shall have skirting installed in accordance with manufacturer's installation instructions for skirting or reference standards, period. Skirting must be installed within 60 days after completion of utility hookups.
Must be
okay, but
installed.
if the um if the builder sees that um a say your location, for your location, the manufacturer would require that you have skirting. It would have to do with things like ventilation and humidity and stuff like that. Um, but usually when a community requires skirting, it's for aesthetic reasons. So what is in the code for New York State is if you have skirting, you have to, for instance, meet the vapor barrier requirements for your specific location. So that's how it all plays together. But the people at the New York State Manufactured Housing Association made it clear that basically in New York State, if there's skirting required, it's for because local local people want it for aesthetic reasons. And um, it's, I guess, debatable what the other advantages are. There are
I think
installation
there's,
requirements, though.
yeah, I mean, I hear you, which is why I originally sort of got my backup about the skirting requirement, because I thought it was primarily for aesthetic reasons.
Mhm.
Again, I have less problem with it because it's gonna be in a commercial, essentially, facility, a multi-manufactured home park. But, I lived in a trailer for a while here. I also drove by, the trailer park here. All the manufactured homes I've seen on here have skirting on them. And we had a discussion with Adam, I think, who has sort of installed some. I mean, you get a lot of pipe freezing problems if you don't. So it's a really good idea. It may be possible to do without it, particularly if you take other steps to keep your stuff from freezing underneath your water lines and septic line.
It's
But
covered,
anyway, I don't have a problem with requiring
it,
it
it's
this way.
covered in the insulation requirement. That's why that's the distinction they're making. I'm not disagreeing that it's good to have insulation, but you don't need skirting in order to have insulation, and that's why people end up saying it's for aesthetic reasons. They're not saying it's not helpful for other reasons. Depending on the insulation, you may or may not like looking at it.
Right.
And people care about how their homes look.
Do you have an objection to requiring it for a manufactured home park? Or are you okay with leaving this in?
Well, it's a question for you.
Yeah, I have no idea how much it adds to the cost.
And I admit,
And
the cost still gets borne by the individual, typically, you bring your mobile home in, you install it, you gotta put the skirting on. Yeah, I, I have to think they'll probably save in their energy bill, but,
what if you want to have skirting on one side and not the other? By the way, Michelle is in the waiting room.
we should let her in.
It just appeared.
Okay, good. Yeah, I see the notes just appeared on my screen there. Thank you for that, Will.
So, like, um, if let's say your mobile home is facing the road, do you want skirting all the way around? In terms of insulation, it might make a difference, but also there's really complex ventilation codes. And the ventilation codes for manufactured homes are beyond, I would have to start reading now and report back in 6 months to really understand what all their concerns are. But there are lots of concerns about ventilation, and it touches on what's going on underneath your mobile home because most of the utilities are supplied through your floor.
But I think the point there is that that's what the installer is supposed to know about. I don't think anyone expects, the average mobile home buyer owner to wade through those requirements. That's why you actually have to, hire a certified installer, right? That's a state, I believe, requirement, and they know how to ventilate properly, yada, 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 right? So yes, I admit it can be complicated, but again, it's not a concern that I think hits the average resident, and that's really where we're trying to put something in that doesn't burden people too much. So yes, there is the cost of putting skirting on. Again, I would still, because we try to be an energy efficient community, tend to lean towards it, because everything I've read has said that it is more energy efficient to have skirting around the trailer than not.
And again, this is for a multifamily development, this
Right.
isn't being applied to individual homes, which, you need to think about the community as well and the kinds of protections you might want to be giving, on behalf of the town to somebody who's potentially moving into a mobile home park where they don't necessarily own the mobile home.
Yeah, I don't really have an objection. I just, I think there are other options, but skirting's the easiest, fastest standard option for um accomplishing what the skirting does.
Okay, well then I'm happy with Barb's word changes on that. And so unless there's other objections to how that was phrased, which again reads, a manufactured home used as part of a multifamily development shall have skirting installed in accordance with the manufacturer's installation instructions for skirting or reference standards. Skirting must be installed within 60 days after utility hookup. Did I get all the words right?
After completion of utility
After.
hookups, yeah. I've got it in here.
Yeah, okay. And okay, so good to go? Will, you're muted.
Can I just ask a question about that 60-day requirement?
Yeah.
Were those on recently adopted laws, or were they prior to, say, like, I don't know, 2020 or prior to 2015?
I don't know how recent they all were. I mean, they're not like dating back to the 70s or anything. So I don't know. I don't know, Will,
Okay.
but there were several of them that I looked at in New York State.
Mhm.
So that's all I can say at this point.
Yeah, because the reason I ask is the manufacturer's installation instructions come with a sequence of what order things get done in. You
Right.
can't.
So would you
Yeah.
ever have this? Would you ever have the situation where the sequence is you can't install skirting within 60 days of putting everything else together on your manufactured home?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the steps for what all gets done. S- Like, for instance, some manufactured homes get built on basements, right? Um, I'm assuming that, you're talking about manufactured homes, but I wasn't thinking that about whether you mean only those that are not on a permanent foundation or are built on a basement, that you can have a mobile home or a manufactured home on a basement.
So
And
would a manufactured home park be likely to put all of its units on basements?
they might leave it up to the individual depending on what type of structure they bring into the area. There's a place in Danby that's pretty interesting that way. It's what I would think of as a manufactured home park. It's out 96B, and when you go there and drive around, it's several different styles of homes, and some are on foundations, I believe.
So
So do we want to include some wording about that would accommodate the foundation piece?
or my other thought is it necessary to have the time frame on? I mean, I guess that's the question is, it says you have to have it. The time frame gives you a window, you don't have to have it right away, but it does say you can't put it off indefinitely. So maybe that's why it was in those laws. But
Right.
if we didn't mention a time frame, it does still have to happen.
Yeah, but it already may be in a
But
specific.
I
area.
guess, I guess somebody can argue, well, I'm gonna do you 2 years down the road. I mean, I think that's the point of including the time, that, no, it doesn't have to be done day one, but you also can't wait 5 years to do it.
Well,
So
will they,
hang on a minute, Will,
yeah, sorry.
in the piece that you sent around, it has a sentence. Permanent perimeter enclosures shall be constructed of materials as required by this code for regular foundation construction. So if you think we should include something about, skirting is not required if permanent perimeter inclusions of a regular foundation construction are used, then you don't need skirting. We could add that in.
Hmm. I'm just not assuming the skirting is the last step.
Oh,
And
this isn't either, Will. This doesn't say that skirting is the last step.
what do you think the last step might look like?
I
Do you
have no
think it's
idea.
interior?
I've never personally
Yeah.
installed
Yeah.
a manufactured home, so I can't answer that. But
It-
once utilities are hooked up, I mean, you're not gonna be hooking up utilities and paying for them unless you're thinking you're gonna be using the thing, right? So within 60 days of hooking up utilities seems to be a reasonable approach, and again, some other communities included wording about within 60 days of, placement of the unit
Mhm.
on the land, which seems to me, that's a little bit, more iffy, because you could place a unit on the land and have no intention of moving anyone into it for several years, right? But if it's gonna be inhabited, you've gotta hook up utilities. You could put the skirting up before the utility hookup. There's nothing in this language that would prevent that,
Uh,
right?
not in this language, but it may be elsewhere. But you are allowed to add like let's call them porches or patios. And I don't know how that
Well, so if you did
would
that
jive.
and I admit maybe, so then you take skirting off in the one section where you're putting your porch on if you need to get to something underneath to attach the porch. I don't think does not seem to me to be a showstopper, right? So what Barb's question to start with was, in what case would adding the skirting 60 days after utility hookup lead to some significant issue, I think. And I'm also having a hard time seeing how, I can see how in limited ways it might get in the way or not be necessary, or they could put it on, like I say, at any time in there. So I guess I'm okay with the 60 days after utility hookup. Because it seems to me that once you've done the stuff, that's most of the stuff underneath. And if you're on a foundation, you may not be doing skirting at all, but the state law has you covered, right? Because it says if you're on a foundation, you do X instead of,
Right.
so I think we're probably okay.
I, I, I'm sorry, it just makes me really uneasy because you hook up the utilities, you could still have work to do inside and need to get underneath. I guess you can go underneath. Honestly, I don't have the background either to know, like, is it even easy to take the skirting off? If you know that, then that's helpful to
I
know
mean,
about.
again, I lived in a trailer, we had a plumbing
Mhm.
problem, we had to take a
Mhm.
panel off to go underneath to fix whatever was
Mhm.
going on with the toilet, so it definitely is
Oh,
possible.
okay.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
you can remove the skirting. I mean, that would be part of the manufacturer's installation instructions, is to make sure that you have someplace, within that skirting, that you have access to what's underneath the unit, because you have to, to access plumbing, access electricity. So yes, that would have to be able to be done without ripping the whole manufactured home apart.
Yeah, but you'd also have to make sure you meet all the insulation and vapor barrier requirements as
Yep.
well. And the insulation requirements will be after the utility hookup as well. So it wouldn't, it's not going to be the next step.
No, no.
That's all. So,
So long as
yeah,
they,
I don't
but
know
the
how
thing
long
is
these
2
things
months
take.
enough time to do all the various other things you have to
Yeah,
do, and then you put the skirting on, so.
I guess I guess someone could apply for an extension with the code officer's
Yeah, we don't have any,
approval.
and I was gonna mention the same thing. I mean, I think that in 99% of the cases, this probably covers it. And if there's a case where there's a
Mhm.
problem, I would assume that someone could approach the code officer and he or she would be reasonable. Like, gee, we are gonna do this, but this part that we need is delayed for 3 months, and
Mhm.
I assume that
Yeah,
could be.
as long as that's a reasonable expectation.
It is on my part. Some people don't think town officers work that way. So, and I've run across people
Well,
like,
I don't know, we'd have had a pretty wide gamut of code officers too, haven't we?
yeah. The,
Okay.
the one when we were designing our house, I think our architect said he could bring something to him on a napkin, but anyway, that is,
Um, okay, well, we'll just think positive thoughts here.
all right, well, we will, again, this is a recommendation to the town board. So, all right, we'll, and, yeah.
I do appreciate Barb's comment about, it's a park, not an individual um installation of a building, and it does protect your neighbor, those who were already there also, right?
Right, yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, similar argument could be made for an individual home outside of a manufactured home park, but obviously the manufactured home park is usually a typically dense development, so
Hmm.
and again, a quasi-commercial use of land, and so we feel okay about intruding more.
Sure, it's a good point.
Okay, so moving on then is indeed the language about the permit application for any manufactured home going in. So section 5.1 in the zoning law is the regulations for all districts. And in general, I've been trying to put things at the end so as not to bollocks up all the numbering, but this one didn't work well because it got into like environmental standards and various other things, and that it felt better earlier on. So my proposal is that subpoint C of section 5.1 and points A and B have to do with like no more than one house on a lot except for multifamily housing and some other very general things that I'm not recalling at the moment. So for 5.1.c, I'm now suggesting the same permit language. So installing a manufactured home requires a completed Town of Caroline manufactured home installation permit application. There's an existing 5.1c through F, they all move down one letter, become 5.1d through G. And that would be my recommendation. If people want to look at the zoning section to see if that makes sense to them, we should do that now.
It makes sense to me.
Okay, are you okay with that, Will, or do you want to take a look at what the parts are?
No, that's fine.
Okay, so that's just the same language before, so any objection to putting that in? Okay, and again, it's just a reminder, it's not a new requirement, it's just something the town already had that, a lot of us didn't know we had. All right, so then, and I think this will, go ahead.
Are all the parts to fill in on the permit application still appropriate?
I think so. I mean, I read through it was a few months ago when I first saw it. I read through it, but it was saying things like, what type of skirting and what type of foundation and this, that, and the other. And if it's a whatever this year, the magic HUD year, then you have to have an engineering analysis done to make sure it's safe and that all stairs have to have a railing. There was various things on the form that seemed relevant. As far as I can tell.
Oh,
But
good.
yeah, no, it seemed good. Some of the things that we had been wondering about, it seemed to go over, so. Okay.
Yeah, and just a note here that there's a section on that form that says additional documents needed with permit application, and one of the things that you can check is stamped foundation plan from the manufacturer. So would that be the basements that, foundation basements that Will is talking about?
Could be, I don't
it
know.
was stamped
There's
foundation plan.
different types of foundations.
Because
Even
we
at
talked about
home.
a pad rather than a foundation, right? I mean, feels like there's a
it's-
difference there, but
Right, okay, well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you that the form seems appropriate, and I'm not sure that that's our role to revise a code enforcement form anyway.
yeah, right. But the code officer can go through that. No, it's a reasonable question. Probably he or she should take a look at it to make sure every decade or so.
Right,
All right, so that brings us to the point about community facilities. And so I put some word out, and I think indeed Will raised a good question about definitions. I was definitely not wanting to write definitions, at least when I was putting this together last night. But I think it's a reasonable thing to do. And so let's discuss this. And I think that in terms of actually drafting a definition, that's probably better not done in committee. But I'm going to have some discussion of what that such a definition ought to contain. But writing anything more than about one sentence long in committee can be very difficult. So that'd be my recommendation.
and a definition of what?
Well, let me read this, because I refer to two things. So I say, and this would be, again, in the existing multifamily housing section, which is 6.5.13, to add, it has a subpoint E, and we're adding a 14th point to subpoint E, which says, any multifamily development with 10 or more units shall provide one or more, and here's the kicker, community buildings and or recreation areas. And just sidestep, the original current law just says recreational areas, but I didn't want to, I thought a community building was a nice, so
Okay.
community and or recreation areas, which are easily accessible to all park occupants. The facilities provided should be relevant to the clientele of the multifamily housing development. That was taken from your notes. I didn't want to spell out, for example, but we could put a for example in there if we wanted to. Continuing, the total area of such community buildings and recreation areas shall total at least 5% of the net acreage of the park, parenthesis, net acreage defined as the area that is not set aside for conservation open space lands, end paren. Final sentence, the community buildings or recreation areas shall not be located on conservation open space lands. So I will raise at least two good points. One of which is, so what's a recreation area? And
So my question was what's being defined, because I think also in Will's comments was a mention of conservation open space lands, and I think that's already defined, right?
those would already defined,
Okay,
yes, because
alright.
as part of the conservation, design section,
Okay.
that it specifies that.
Okay,
But she also asked the question, for example, what about a trail through, because again, the conservation of these lands, the whole idea is they are for, something like hiking, bird watching, preserving land.
Right.
Would a trail through a conservation area, should that not be counted as part of this?
correct. So just reflecting the conversation that we had at the last meeting, I would suggest in the last sentence, adding the word required. So it would read, the required community buildings or recreation areas shall not be located on conservation open space lands. So the
That
idea
would do it.
was, that the recreation area and or community buildings would be separate from the required conservation open space. And the purpose of that is to provide a recreation area, a public space that's available to whatever the clientele is of the park. So for example, if there's a lot of children there, one might think a recreation area could be some sort of playground facility, structure, whatever. If it's all seniors, maybe the recreation area is a set of pickleball courts, who knows? But that's why, reflecting the last meeting conversation, we didn't want to get too specific about this because, we're not trying to dictate what a family-oriented mobile home park should have. But we do believe that there should be something that is provided for the community's use other than the conservation open space lands, in addition to the conservation open space lands.
Well, that sounds great. And it, I just think that, and I apologize because you guys have spent way more time on this than I have. But the way it read was that you couldn't have recreation area on the conservation open space, and that didn't seem
Right.
right. So
Okay.
I think your solution of sorry, I have a call that people trying to reach me and they're in a different time zone, so they don't get it. But I'm not sure how to turn it off without just being rude to everybody instead of just you. Yeah, I think your solution of putting required probably covers it. That clarifies that nobody is saying, hey, you can't recreate on conservation open space land,
Right.
right? Okay.
Right. Because I think, and that is, I'd have to go through how that's discussed in the conservation design section. But I think the intent is that it's green space that is available to the, people in the development for sure. And does not preclude, I think it probably says paths, et cetera. So the one thing I'll say is, so the existing mobile home park law in this called it a developed recreation area. And so, which I assume means, it could be a baseball field, right? That sort of thing.
Sure.
And so the question is, is the word recreation areas good enough? And the reason I put community buildings in is, if someone wanted to have a commons building where people could host dances, right? And that seems like a very reasonable facility. So I didn't want to think like, oh, it has to be a recreation area, like something outside. So I included the word building. But is recreation area good enough, or do we need to say anything else?
I like that. I like the reasoning you both have verbalized about what the intention is, and I like the openness of it. I think we're better off leaving it um, somewhat undefined, as long as it's not preventing use, like hiking or something. That was my concern.
Okay, I didn't get that in my quick read of your email. That's a good point. So we want to make sure we don't do that. This helps do that.
Mhm.
So that's great. So with that change, are we, again, okay making this recommendation to the town board? You guys think settled on 10 or more units last time? I'm not gonna second guess that.
Right.
It's fine. I don't know if we'll ever have outside of, Boyceville, more than 10. But.
Right.
Okay, and so then the last thing related to this had to do with road widths and turning radii, et cetera. And so Will, you raised the question about fire personnel and emergency responders. Also,
Police.
police, right? So there is a provision in the existing site plan law. There is a line saying that basically, and I can read it was definitely fire chiefs and something else are to be provided plans of everything going through site plan review. It doesn't say, it does not say, and they must sign off on the plans before approval. It doesn't say that, but it does say they have to get the plans. And I presumably, if they have a concern, they would then voice that to the review board. At least I hope so.
Mhm.
So with that in mind, the only addition I was adding is in the relevant transportation section of the site plan review laws. This is Article 7. The specific section is 7.4.A.6. There's now going to be a subpoint I that says if the development involves installing manufactured homes, then the road widths, particularly turning radius where appropriate, I don't know if there should be radius or radii, should be sufficient to facilitate the maneuvering movements of vehicles with mobile or modular homes attached. And that again is lifted directly from what you had in the minutes. And so again,
Very
presumably they would do that anyway, but this just makes sure that the review board is thinking about that when they're reviewing mobile home park. Will, you're starting to say?
Very practical, and it it actually is more and more relevant to how things get delivered.
Yeah.
I'm just, I'm just looking at this now and I wonder, given what we just said about definitions earlier, if that last sentence should just read movements of vehicles with manufactured homes attached, rather than say with mobile or modular homes attached.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Any objections to that? Okay, that's great. Okay. That's the real business, and I have prepared some information on the agrivoltaics summit that I went to. I'm okay either way, if we want to push that off until at least one of, we have four rather than just three members, if not all five members of the board, which hopefully will be next meeting. I'm cool with that. Part of the intent of doing it this time was that then we'd be ready. I might actually have someone like Caleb or somebody come next meeting. If you guys want to call it quits here, that's fine with me, or I can go through my presentation. Probably about 20 minutes, be a guess.
I would suggest, I mean, not time wise, I mean, I'm fine with the time, but I think it was Adam in particular who expressed an interest in hearing, that summary. And I imagine Brad is interested in it as well. I don't mean to suggest not, but I think specifically, I remember him saying something about how he was looking forward to that. So I would rather, unless there's, some pressing need to do it tonight and get something in the minutes, I would rather do it when one or both of the other members are here to be able to ask you questions and hear it in person.
Okay, great. Well, that would tend to be my preference. What I will have to do is think a bit about what else would be happening at the next meeting then.
Yeah.
But I'll have to cogitate on that.
Okay.
And, because again, we now, I think, so the one other thing, so there was one other item that, as I said, the flood zone thing, the floodplains. And whether they have any language about, whether there's already things that prevent these from being installed in flood zones. That was in your minutes. Is there someone who wants to look into that question, however the question was phrased in those last minutes?
Whether you can install manufactured homes in flood zones?
Do you have a copy of your?
I'd have to find it. I could be able to find it real quickly. That was from the last minutes that you said.
Right, it was one of your yellow points to be investigated.
Let's see, that was the April meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Looking through the minutes. Take a minute. Oh, here we go. Okay. Yeah, so 7(1)(e) in the existing law, I think, prohibits a mobile home from being located in a 100-year floodplain. So the to-do was to first determine if that language is already in the building or fire code for the town. And then second is to look at that 100-year flood designation maps to understand the context and then discuss again at the May meeting, which is now the June meeting, which
Right.
may be July meeting.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't have time between now and a July meeting, so I'm not gonna volunteer to do it.
Okay. What was meant by looking at the flood map to get the context, just to understand how much of the
Yeah,
town is
right,
okay,
right,
okay,
yeah.
okay. All right. All right. All right, here's what I will do. I will, as usual, contact our code officer and see what he knows
Okay.
About this question. And if I need to go further from there, Will, maybe you and I can figure out a way to divvy up some of the work.
Okay. And I'm still not a very dependable person. I'm sorry.
But always with good ideas.
Well, I am certainly mouthy. I appreciate your patience. I really do.
Okay. So I'm thinking that next meeting, the presentation, we'll discuss this floodplain thing. So totally wrap up the manufactured home park law. Probably just go over the solar law. So everyone's kind of on the same page. Some of us worked on it, some of it haven't, but I looked at it. And that'll be that meeting. And then the meeting after that, I'll probably invite, Caleb and or Guillermo Metz to come in. Because the specific charge or question that we're working on is anything we can or should do to the law to make it more supportive of agrivoltaics. So that first means understanding what that is, what agrivoltaics are, and what kinds of things are friendly to that. As you see, Caleb is a man with many ideas, but not always things that we can sort of funnel into a law. So we will get there. So that looks like a plan for the next couple of meetings. All right. So when will the next meeting be? I should go ahead and get my calendar here. July. Okay, what do people have in the week starting the 21st of July? I have a commitment on the Wednesday, so I'm open either Tuesday or Thursday, or Monday for that matter. That'd be the 22nd or the 24th.
Well, I currently have no medical appointments scheduled then, but my schedule is set by lawyers and they like to do lots of things very sneakily at the last minute.
Oh, dear.
So I think you should just plan without me and I'll do the best I can.
Okay.
The 22nd or the 24th of July, either of those evenings look okay to me.
Okay. Michelle, do you have any conflicts?
No, they look good to me too.
Okay.
Okay. When I wanted to mention, you saw my note about the board approved a new flood protection law, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I made that announcement in your stead.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I'm on my way to New Hampshire, so.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Hotel.
Well, you made it in time for part of the meeting at least. So, okay. So what I will do, I think we'll tentatively schedule the 22nd of July, but I will put it out to Adam and Brad and make sure that works for them as well. And if not, we'll switch to the 24th. But let's pencil in the 22nd and set that firmly in the next couple of days. Okay. And with that. The meeting is.
So say that again.
So I think that the intended date is Tuesday, July 22nd at 7:30. But if it turns out that Adam or Brad says, "Oh, I can't do that night, but I can make the 24th,"
okay,
we'll switch to the 24th, and hopefully we know that in the next couple of days. And we'll hope that.
okay.
Okay, I think that's all. Then we'll adjourn the meeting and see you guys in about a month. Do you have something you want to say, Michelle?
I just have one question. So have you finished your recommendations for the town board for changes to the zoning law, or you're still working on that?
We have one more which relates to any language relating to mobile manufactured homes and floodplains.
Okay.
So would it be helpful for you to receive, well, I mean, you'll receive the minutes, right, of what we passed tonight. So that's helpful to you to.
Yeah, because our next meeting is next Wednesday, so I can report back to the town board about what you talked about.
All right, so yeah, sure, we'll get that. Yeah, it'll be pretty straightforward, minutes actually, so we'll get that to you promptly,
Okay, great.
all right? And yeah, so we are 90% done, at
Okay,
least. There's only one item on the agenda left.
okay.
And do you know, I mean, is there any thought on if or when the zoning law might be open for
No,
revision?
but I can, it's something I can ask at the next meeting.
Okay, well, we're just, accumulating these and passing them on to you guys, and just don't lose them, but I'll have a copy.
Okay, good.
Okay, so I guess I will say the meeting is adjourned, and thank you all, and see you again in July.
All right.
Okay, stay
Thank
cool.
you.
Yeah, try
Yeah,
to.
me too.